I'd like to welcome everybody to our November school board meeting. Call the roll, Mr. Basser.
Mr. Jewell.
Present.
Mrs. Lanehart.
Here.
Mrs. McIntosh.
Here.
Mrs. Miller.
Here.
Mrs. Milligan.
Here.
I'd like to ask Shane to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, we will have visitors' comments. Okay, then I'll turn it over to the treasurer, Mr. Basser.
Thank you, Mr. Jewell. No non-action items this month. We weren't able to attend our Capitol Conference and some of the other conferences, just like everything else, not going on. So none of that to update. And whatever I do have to update, I'll get to here when it's time for the 5-year forecast. So with that, I need approval for the minutes from the last regularly scheduled school board meeting, which was October 26th.
I need a motion.
So moved.
First by Mrs. Lanehart,
Second.
by Mrs. McIntosh. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Lanehart,
Yes.
Mrs. McIntosh,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Mrs. Milligan,
Yes.
and Mr. Jewell.
Yes.
Next is financial report for the month. You do have a financial report as part of your packet. The main items of the financial report I'll go over during the 5-year forecast. Just a couple things in the financial report is we do have some what's called now and laters, not the candy, but they're also called then and nows. So we did have a few bills that we don't get them in time, and they may have like an August date on them, and we're getting them in October, and we've already closed for the months of August and September. So what we're doing is we need board approval to approve the fact that as part of our appropriations, we had the money then, and we have the money now. So that's what they're called then and now. So as you see those as part of your packet, you may look at them and think, what are these? That's kind of, that. I know we have several in there this time, and just a crazy summertime, a lot of different things going on, and we had some bills that kind of slipped through the cracks. Nothing outrageous. It doesn't matter if it's $1,000 or $1. We still have the same process to go through. So just wanted to explain that as part of the financial report. So if there's no questions, I'll need approval for the financial report.
I need a motion.
So moved.
First by Mrs. Lanehart,
Second.
second by Mrs. Milligan. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Lanehart,
Yes.
Mrs. Milligan,
Yes.
Mr. Jewell,
Yes.
Mrs. McIntosh,
Yes.
and Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
Okay, the next is a 5-year forecast, and again, everybody knows that in November and May, we do what's called a 5-year forecast or a 5-year projection. I always like to preface this with I think doing a 5-year forecast is absolutely insane. There's no way you can predict where you can be 5 years from now. I'd like to think a 3-year projection will be a little bit more realistic, but we do what we have to do, especially in our jobs, to make sure that we follow all the rules. So my 5-year forecast, a couple things I want to talk about. I don't normally talk about it a whole lot, but a few things I do want to talk about this time. I'll start with the revenue side. I think I updated you previously. On the revenue side for property taxes, houses are selling, everything is good, property values are going up. That is fantastic. The downside is our favorite DP&L plant that sits down there by Rice Fields is they're looking to lower the property value on that piece of property once again. Back in the day, it was over 20 million, and they were able to get that reduced down to a property value of about 12 million. And now that it's basically abandoned and they can't do anything with it, They're looking to value the property at about $500,000, so $500,000. So they're looking to lower the property value on that piece of property. The owners are, they have to go through the process. I don't see it being stopped. I see it being approved. So that'll lower property value, especially the utility property value in our district, somewhere around $10 million, a little more than $10 million. Is that going to be a huge negative to us? No, it won't be a huge negative to us, but it will offset some of the gains that we're getting in other areas where we're getting houses being built and developed, and as fast as they can get them built, we've got people buying them and moving them into them. So I don't think, based on my own projections on it, I don't think it's going to hurt us a whole lot, but we're not going to be able to gain all the value we're gaining from the other places in our district that is doing better, because that's going to be a minus. So I just wanted to bring that up. The second thing I wanted to talk about was income tax, and we've talked about income tax previously. I think I updated you that our original income tax that came in this year, which is in July, so that's this fiscal year, but it's actually for April, May, and June of the previous year, was down 18%. I had projected for the year that we're going to be down about 10%. So it was a little scary for me when the first one came in at 18% down, but that was when people were out of work the most. Yeah. That was a time, it was the very front end of this pandemic. A lot of places were shut down, and I think some people realized that's just not going to work. So we got our second one, which was in October, which would be for the months of July, August, and September. And the good news for that is it was higher than last year at the same time.
That's good.
So not only did we not lose money compared to last year, it was a little bit higher than last year. So where I had predicted that we were going to be about 10% less on our income revenue, I don't believe it's going to be that of a loss for the year. Hopefully it's even, or maybe half of that, somewhere between 0 and 5% reduction on our income tax for the year. Who knows? We'll see what happens. We've got 2 more collections to come in over the next 6-7 months, and I certainly cannot predict what direction we're going to be going. And as it appears, as we stand today, a presidential change and maybe some policy changes in there as well. But I can't even tell you who the next president's going to be able to do, I'm certainly not going to get into the politics of that. It's just, how do you make any type of projection when you don't necessarily know how that's going to be? And then the third thing I want to talk about on the revenue side is the state revenue. Last year at the end of the year, we take a $280,000 hit, and they tell us we're going to continue to take that $280,000 hit for this year. That's all budgeted in here. What I do want to bring up is right now there's a Senate bill and a House bill moving through both the House and the Senate at the same time, hopefully on a fast track, and it's essentially called the Fair School Funding Plan. The Fair School Funding Plan is being, I want to say touted, but being pushed by nearly every school district in the state of Ohio. It's a good thing for schools. It's an increase of funding for schools if it goes through. But as we sit here today, I don't know, A, if it'll be passed, B, if it gets passed and they fund us less than what we're currently being funded, C, they could pass it and fund us the exact same amount of dollars we're getting now, or D, they could fund it and put all the money into it that they say they're going to put into it, and we get an increase. So sitting here today, I can't even tell you where our state funding is going to be. And then I'm supposed to put together a 5-year projection with all these things going on. And that doesn't even say a whole lot to do with the expenses of moving into a brand new building in the middle of a pandemic and all the expenses that we're going to incur, whether that's cleaning inside the building or outside of the building or remote learning type expenses. All I can tell you is all the grants that we're able to get, I'm going to use every penny that we can to try to keep that money out of being in the general fund. And we're going to try to be as conservative as possible and do the best we can for the year. So what does that mean for the 5-year projection? For the first time since we passed this levy back in 2013, 14 is when we passed it originally. For the first time since then, I'm projecting deficit spending, that we're going to, after 8 years, 7 years, 8 years of collections, we're going to finally spend more than what we bring in. Is that necessarily a bad thing? Well, it's not a good thing if you're spending more than what you're bringing in. The good news is we do have a nice carryover in those 7 or 8 years that it's not going to put us into any type of emergency. What it does do is it puts us in a position where we really need to refocus and figure out, you know, the best ways that we can balance our budget on a year-to-year basis. You know, so if we do overspend, we got to figure out a way to not do that in the future. We don't want to eat away into our carryover balance. But I'm here to tell you, there's so many variables going on.
Right.
We just need to be able to do the best we can as we move forward. So, you know, I'm conservative when it comes to these numbers. I'm hoping that we do better than what's on paper here with you guys. But essentially, what I want to tell you is even with those numbers, even be conservative with a 5-year projection, we have money for those 5 years. I know the last year here, it shows that we're in the red by about $100,000. That's a wash. So the good news is I can present a 5-year forecast to you that has us in the black on our carryover throughout the 5 years. And there's so many variables that's going to go into play between now and the next couple years, let alone 5 years. So I know I've spent a lot of time talking on this. I don't normally do that, but
That's good.
I kind of felt like we had some things that, you know, we need to make sure we understand when we're looking at this. And again,
Well,
you know, I
don't
like to
if
put
a
everything
lot
on
of
the table.
people understand that the sidewalks cost us a lot more money outside the project.
Yes. You know, as we're doing things here at the school, you know, we do have our project money, but we also have money that's outside of the project that we're having to spend on some things. We tried to maximize everything we could do inside the building.
Yeah.
You get one shot inside the building. You don't get to go back and do a redo. Where outside, you get some opportunities that you can keep adding things on the outside. So I know there was a conscious effort with the planning team as we went through this, the core team, to get the best we could on the inside. So there's some areas outside where we're spending money to finish up this project. And it not necessarily coming out of the general fund, but it is expensive. You know, we do have interest dollars that we've earned from the money that we've had invested as this project has gone along. And we do have our permanent improvement account. So we do have some other accounts that we're doing some of these things, but wow, it is expensive. So if we don't have any other questions about a 5-year forecast, I just simply need an approval.
I need a motion.
So moved.
First by Mrs. McIntosh,
Second.
by Mrs. Miller. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. McIntosh,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Mrs. Milligan,
Yes.
Mr. Jewell,
Yes.
and Mrs. Lanehart.
Yes.
Thank you. That's my windy report for this evening.
At this time, I will turn it over to Dr. Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Jewell. Before I get into Superintendent's report, I do want to talk about a little bit with the financial thing, and I know Mr. Bachelor is probably cringing at me talking finances, but with the CARES money, Mr. Bachelor and the district was very conservative about what they spent as far as COVID-related issues and not knowing if we were going to get reimbursed for any of that money. It was always speculation that the CARES money would take care of that, so again, did not overspend, kept within the budget, did what we need to do, and then when they came back with the CARES money, said, we'll reimburse you this amount. Then we went to the county said, we've got some money for you, but since you have been reimbursed more than you've spent, you won't get any additional money. So those districts that overspent got some reimbursement back. So it was kind of like
gosh, if we'd known that, we would have overspent and put ourselves more in the red had we known we were going to get reimbursed, but it did not happen. So kudos to you guys and to Dan for not overspending. We've kept within our means, and we're not a burden on anyone else's taxation. So I just want to put that in there. And while it's kind of a slap in some of the district's face that they're getting no money, we certainly don't feel badly that we did not overspend, so thank you. Okay, back to me. Here on this, first is the building update. A lot of things going on in the building. I think every time we walk in, I know on a daily basis with us, we walk in and there's things that have changed. And for you that walk in monthly or maybe bi-monthly or a couple weeks, it's amazing. You go, oh, they did this, oh, they did that, they did another thing. But we're still a daily improvements, a lot of things being done, some things on back order. We're still looking at some training with a lot of our technical things, our IT related, our TVs, our presentational materials, and that's all being taken care of, anything from our fax machines and our phones up to the most intricate IT things. So that's a thing our teachers have done a great job of helping one another, of working with Quentin and with Bruce and saying, hey, this is something we need to know, and we've gotten that training on our early release day. So we're certainly being patient for the most part, getting that taken care of and making do and helping one another. The other things going on is the kilns are supposed to be getting delivered before the calendar year is up and that will help that in our playground, our outside playground. So those plans in the works and being sent to us and plans every day to show us what's going to be there, and hopefully before we leave for winter break, before we leave for Christmas and come back for the new year, that will be up and running. So we may not have a red ribbon on it, but we'll have a red slide, so that'll be perfect. Next thing is the compliance with Nutritional Standards report, and you got that attached. Working with Gail French, she does a great job in the cafeteria. You've got two reports there. One is the consolidated report for 2019-2020, and that got kind of cut short a little bit with COVID in March. And then she has a consolidated report for 2020-2021 that she submitted. And along with that, she had to fill out a form that says the district or school named above has adopted and is enforcing a nutrition standards policy that considers the requirements of Ohio Revised Code 3313.814 and governs the types of foods and beverages that may be sold on the premises of its schedule or of its schools. And we do have that board policy in place, 8500, and that will be submitted in compliance with that. And plenty of time to do that. That doesn't have to be done until November 30th, so we'll do that as soon as break's over. So, but Gail French does an outstanding job in the food service. Probably one of the few food services around that I know of that are in the black and not draining on the funds of the school district, the general fund. And so we certainly appreciate what they've been doing. Their patience level as far as getting stuff up and running, we're certainly able to do what we can do because of the hard work of the ladies in that cafeteria and serving from both sides and everything else that they're doing. It's been great, and the food is phenomenal. So if you have any questions with that, I'd be glad to direct you right to Gail and let her answer those questions. So perfect. Item 3 is technical changes, and I'm going to broach this a little bit also with our next item, which is the approving the first readings. But the first board policy there, the compliance officers, that was one of the policies that we had to talk about, was 2266, and with that we had to make sure that we named our compliance officers. Those were out of date. Kim Perkins and Dave Slammer will be our compliance officers, as well as our coordinators and our investigators and everything else that goes with that. So we'll make sure that we get their training, we'll get that on the website and being compliant with that. But that was a technical change there to make sure that we had compliance officers named on those board policies. So that's all that I have for our non-action items. If you have any questions, I'm glad to entertain those at this time. Okay, going right into the action items, general district businesses, we've got the approval of the first reading of the following policies. And I won't step on Mr. Bastrop because there's about 6 of them that are money, and I will not even pretend like I know those, so I'll let him talk about that. There's 3 policies, as I said, 2266, which is the Title IX, basically. We had to make sure that we got new coordinators, training provided, and links to the website, and that'll be that new policy, and get that updated. And so that was something we had to have. And then 2270, we had to make sure that we had that as well. and, I'm sorry, 2266, and then, I'm sorry, 3220. I have too many marks on my paper. I'm going to forget which one I'm supposed to be talking about here. 3220 is OTES, and as you know, with the Ohio Teacher Evaluation System, they upgraded it. So a lot of districts went to the OTES 2.0 this year. Some piloted it, some went to it. We chose to stay on 1.0 for this school year, and we will be going to 2.0 next school year. But we had to have a policy in place by September, and we obviously missed that deadline. So we are getting that in place now. I've had conversation with Sam Lee and Dan Ramos from the OEA, and we're making sure that we are, that OTES 2.0 is everything we want it to be and more. And we're then working with our principals and our teachers and making sure that our OTES is in place this year, and then we'll upgrade to the 2.0 for next year. And then the only other policy that has any major revisions is 8450.01, which is the mask policy. And you know, we put that in fairly quickly when the pandemic hit and starting the school year, and that has simply been updated to make sure that it's with current legal language. All the rest of them, other than Mr. Bassler's, are all simply language. One of the big things was a lot of places would say superintendent or superintendent designee. They've just put superintendent with the understanding that wherever it says superintendent, it could also be a designee. A lot of just language that they've revised, took out, modified, just to make it a little more streamlined and more consistent with the policy. But like I said, those three were the major revisions. So if you have any questions on any of those, please let me know. And I'll turn over those other 6 if Dan wants to talk about them.
I don't want to talk about them. They're all just routine changes. To me, it's, you know, just a way to change the language a little bit. For the financial policies, nothing of any substance being changed whatsoever. It's just an update.
So if anybody would like to sit on the next webinar with Dan and I and Norm Burkhart, you'd be more than welcome to do that. I was on there for 3 hours the other day, and it was the best time of my life I can remember. So if we could get the approval of the first reading of those policies, I'd appreciate it.
I need a motion.
So moved.
First by Mrs. Lanehart,
Second.
by Mrs. Milligan, I think. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Lanehart,
Yes.
Mrs. Milligan,
Yes.
Mr. Jewell,
Yes.
Mrs. McIntosh,
Yes.
and Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
Okay, item 1B is approve the consolidation of property deeds of the Carlisle Local School District, attachment F.
Need a motion.
So moved.
First by Mrs. Miller,
Second.
by Mrs. McIntosh. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Mrs. McIntosh,
Yes.
Mrs. Lanehart,
Yes.
Mr. Jewell,
Yes.
and Mrs. Milligan.
Yes.
Okay, item 2 is certified employment. Sherry Swiger, Mike Griffith, Pam Helsinger, and Jim Helsinger as substitute VLA program teachers. After meeting with our people, discussing the workload, the caseload of our VLA teachers that we have on site, some of our students were going to VLA. We felt that we needed some additional help with the grading of papers because of the workload that was placed on those teachers. And this is going to be on an as-needed basis with these retired teachers. Reached out to them. They said they'd be willing to do that. They're going to be getting paid at the sub rate. And again, as needed. And if VLA bumps up, their workload will be increased. And if it drops down, then they know that it could be, we would not need them anymore. But certainly it will help our teachers that are doing this at this time.
I need a motion.
So moved.
First by Mrs. McIntosh,
Second.
second by Mrs. Milligan. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. McIntosh,
Yes.
Mrs. Milligan,
Yes.
Mrs. Lanehart,
Yes.
Mr. Jewell,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
Okay, 3 is classified appointment, as written there.
Need a motion.
So moved. Second.
Did I hear one down
I
here?
had a first. Who had a second?
Mrs. Milligan?
Okay.
Need a second?
Mrs. Milligan.
Mrs. Milligan.
Who had the first?
Lanehart.
Okay, I heard it down there then. Okay. Okay, Mrs. Lanehart had the first, and Mrs. Milligan had the second. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Lanehart,
Yes.
Mrs. Milligan,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Mrs. McIntosh,
Yes.
and Mr. Jewell.
Yes.
Item 4, supplemental resignation, Charles Green is half assistant varsity basketball coach.
Need a motion?
So moved.
Milligan.
That's Miller.
Milligan.
Who was it?
Milligan.
Mrs. Milligan first. Need a second.
I'll second.
Mrs. McIntosh. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Milligan,
Yes.
Mrs. McIntosh,
Yes.
Mr. Jewell,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Mrs. Lainhart.
Yes.
And then item 5 is supplemental employment, Jared Rager as the assistant JV basketball coach, 9th grade.
Need a motion?
So moved.
First by Mrs. Lainhart. Need a second?
Second.
Mrs. Miller. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Lainhart,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Jewell,
Yes.
Mrs. McIntosh,
Yes.
Mrs. Milligan.
Yes.
Thank you very much. That's all the items that I have.
Okay, you probably don't have anything to say since he.
Actually,
he took all-
Dan stole my thunder
Yeah.
on House Bill 305. I even had something written up about it. It's not even legislative, but I do want to say that a lot of our teachers this year are being recognized by Warren County Project Excellent. If somebody, I know we have a recipient out there, so if I said that wrong, let me know. But I also know that this month, I noted, well, right after last board meeting, Leah Paulskamp was also recognized on October 31st, and I think that's great to see so many Carlisle teachers being recognized, because I know that they're working hard and under extreme circumstances. So I just want to say, I know Leah's not here, but I do pass that on. I appreciate what those of you get recognized, and also those of you who are not being recognized. I do appreciate it.
Anything from the CTC?
No, I was absent that day, so.
Okay. Any old business? Any new business? Like to thank everybody for coming. And I know it's been chaos here and there, but I think our school system has really done a fantastic job with the kids, and appreciate everything you guys do.
I would
So-
like to say something, but, it has been a great testimony to the teamwork of the Carlisle teachers and staff. I mean, with the numbers that we have, you never know who's gonna be on any given day, whether it's gonna be out for testing, out for quarantine, out for whatever, and we still have our normal lives to lead. I mean, all of a sudden somebody's after you, like, what's wrong with them? Like, well, they had a dentist appointment, or something like that. So you still have the normal things going on, plus the COVID, and our teachers have done a phenomenal job of covering for one another, doing what they need to do, being where they need to be, and it's been great to see. I mean, it's been a stretch. We've all been stretched. I mean, this 2-day week is probably gonna take its toll on all of us, and it's gonna seem like 8 days rather than 2, but they've done a phenomenal job, and just can't give them enough kudos and thanks for what they are doing every day.
Yeah, my family, we went through this, me and my wife and my daughter. And my wife still kind of struggles a little bit. It's been, over a month, and she still struggles a little bit with it. So, but we thank, everybody for all their prayers and, the well-wishers and stuff for us. And at that, I need a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
First by Mrs. McIntosh,
Second?
second by Mrs. Lainhart. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. McIntosh,
Yes.
Mrs. Lainhart,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Mrs. Milligan,
Yes.
and Mr. Jewell.
Yes,
Time is 6:29.
Thank you.
thank you.